to show you guys how I lay out a guard fit and then go machine it. So this is a dagger blade I'm working on. First thing I want to find is the thickness of my ricasso. I want to make sure that this is flat this direction and square to the blade, and that these two shoulders are perfectly flat to each other. To do that, I use this tool. This is a carbide file guide. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with that. What I do is I finish the blade, I'll get it heat treated, I grind the ricasso area pretty square, within a thousandth or so. Sometimes I'll actually throw it on a surface grinder and get it really, really flat if it's critical, and square to everything else. Once I have that squared out, then I will mount this onto my ricasso and square that to the blade and grind those two perfectly flush to this. That way I can do it after the heat treat and I don't have to soften that much. Once I have those squared and the tang centered on here, then I will polish up the ricasso and do the rest. Now that I have this polished and set, I'm going to take a pair of calipers and just take a measurement on there. I want to make sure my tang is drafting away. So this is the thickest portion of my knife. In this case, my guard fit there is at 193. All my dowel calipers. And I don't need these to be perfect fits. Generally speaking, I make the slot a little bit undersized and then press fit. In this case, since I'm going to be using a piece of the same Damascus that the blade is made out of, I'm going to need it to be slightly, I can't do a press fit because when I heat treat this so I can get good pattern, if I press fit a lot of times it'll split. So I'll have just a really tight, smooth fit, and there won't be a gap. But that means that I have to make sure that this is absolutely flat. So now that I have that measurement here, that's all I really need for that blade right now. I'm going to take this has just been sprayed with layout blue, and then machined reasonably flat. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And I'm going to scribe a center line. So I'm going to take my 6-inch rule here, my scriber. If I was really worried about it, I could measure for center, but since this is just sort of a random piece, it's not really square anyway. So I'm putting a center line to give myself a reference of where everything wants to go off of. That's a horrible sound. Now I have a center line, you see. Now if I was doing this in drill press, I would use my scriber and scribe. This is a carbide scribe, by the way. This removes material a little more. I would scribe a deep line like that, something I could get a fingernail into. And then I would go and center punch where my holes are going to be, but I could use this carbide line, this deep scribe line, so that all my holes will be in the same plane. And when I drill them, I don't have one hole that's outside of that plane. Since I'm going to use my milling machine and not the drill press, I don't really need to do that. I just need a line. So next thing I'm going to do is just kind of sketch on here with a pencil roughly the shape the guard's going to be. And this is not something I'm going to keep to, it's just an idea so I can kind of help center what I'm going to make. In this case, it's just going to be kind of a quick oval guard. Now I'll lay my blade in the middle of it, and I'm going to mark off the ends of the slots. Now I could do this with math, but I found just marking it's faster and easier and more accurate. So now I have tops of my radius here, right there, and the bottom of my radius here. So I'm going to mark my slot to the bottom of the radius. Get my little square here. So carbide so you guys can see a little better. Okay, so that's the end of my slot. My thickness is determined by the thickness of my ricasso, and since I know that's 193, then I can go and find the right size end mill. We have quite a few around that's just a little undersized, so I still have room to file. So I'll shoot for like 190, 180, 87, somewhere around there. This one ends up being 185. That'll be pretty good. That's 3/16. So I'll use that one to mill the slot. Once I have that milled, once I have that milled, then I will come back and file fit to make sure it's perfect. But this gives me an end point for my slot. My actual slot will end up looking something like this. His radius is on the ends, see? Show that, there we go. From the cutter. Now, because of that, I'm gonna have to go in and file it anyway. So now I can file back to the height of my radius on the tang for strength. Here, see how there's little radiuses right in here. And what that does, it gives me a little bit more strength on my tank, but it also means that when I fit, I can bed this down a little bit. So the only portions I'm trying to fit for a visual is this one line here, and that those are flat to the top, which is a much easier amount of surface area to fit. I could come in with the file guide and cut an undercut all the way around. The downside of that is it does make a slightly weaker knife, and I find it more difficult to fit because now I have to fit all of that surface area all the way around perfectly flush. So I have a lot more area of reveal and a much more obvious angle to fit up. A lot of people do it and a lot of people make it work. It drives me nuts. So I find that the two-sided fit is much easier, and then just having a slight swell to take up that error. So there we go. That's how I lay out a guard fit.